Well, welcome everyone, and excited to have you here at our second inaugural Sustainability Symposium series. My name is Kim Smith. We're going to be focusing today on arts and activism, and we have a wonderful, wonderful group of folks to share their inspirations and talents with you. Again, welcome to GPSEN's Sustainability Symposium series. I'd like to introduce you to our amazing board president and the head of Portland State University's Student Sustainability Center, Serena Dressel. Serena, take it away.
Thank you, Kim. So welcome again to everyone. And today's Sustainability Symposium is part of our speaker series that follows the same collective theme as our previous event. Our first event took place a month ago, the week of the 50th Earth Day celebration, and it followed the theme, A Call for Action, recognizing that now is a time for action for the benefit of all, and that we want to celebrate those in our communities who are making a difference. And so we are looking at the Sustainable Development Goals in all of our events. We are looking at how environmental, economic, and social justice are important grounding principles for thinking through an important sustainable future and looking at the resilience of our communities during these times. So today's conversation will continue looking at the role of action in these times and in a sustainable future. Today's theme is arts and activism. We will be looking at how art and artists are changing our world through artistic creations and performance art. So we are asking, why does art matter? What is the role of art in a changing world? And how can art serve a sustainable future? We will consider the role of artists as educators and facilitators of public engagement. And we've invited a number of artists here today to help share their work and facilitate that conversation. So for today's program, which is also in the chat box, we will begin with some opening remarks. Shortly after I'm speaking, Kim will transition us into the presentations. And like I said, there will be several artists who are joining us today. That will be followed by time for a question and answer with the audience, and then closing remarks by our executive director.
Great, thank you so much, Serena. So the Sustainable Development Goals, most of you are, maybe some of you are not familiar with these. These were accepted by the United Nations and all countries, including the United States, in 2015. These are 17 goals that include social issues to help, so people and prosperity issues along that second line, and planet. And some of the topics you're going to be hearing about will be addressing some of these issues. And goal 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions, and 17, partnerships, are really key in helping us understand the mechanisms for how to achieve these. The second thing to keep in mind that we're excited about is the launch just this month, really, of the new ESD for 2030 decade. And so from 2020 to 2030, we're really identifying the power of education and the role that sustainability education in particular must play in terms of public awareness, training, and of course, formal education too. But really, all of us today, this important educational opportunity to learn about how we can have a sustainable future. So we're really grateful to have some incredible leaders joining us today who are making a big difference around the world. Next up, we're going to move from Liechtenstein, which David and I discovered yesterday. We were talking about this, means light stone. And we're now moving to Amy Livingstone. Isn't that wonderful? What an incredible environmental reference. And the work you guys are doing in your social justice, interdisciplinary visions for a better future. Amy, I'm so proud to have you as a friend, and your beauty, your love of the world, and your deep heart has definitely informed the Sacred Art Studio. And so I'm going to encourage you now to share your screen to teach us about contemporary sacred art and spiritual ecology.
Thank you, Kim. I'm really so deeply moved right now from David's presentation and Shelby and Emily's. I'm really honored to be in this conversation with other amazing artists who are doing such important work in our world. So thank you. I'd also like to start out, after 25 years of living in Portland, Oregon, I'm now based outside Raleigh, North Carolina, and I live on what was once the territory of the Catawba Nation. So I just want to honor them as the original stewards of this land. So over the past 17 years, the vision for my work as an artist and activist has been grounded in a spiritual response to the ecological crisis. This has become more recently now called spiritual ecology. So the work that, the question that I keep asking myself is, how have we in the developed West become so disconnected from our place in the web of life that we're destroying the land base on which all life is dependent? So aside from the industrial and technological revolutions of the 20th century, this is in part due to, in my research, the rise of monotheistic traditions that have placed a personal transcendent deity above creation, essentially eliminating earth-based spirituality and separating us further from the sacredness of the earth. So that's the intention, and now I'm going to share my screen so I can share some of my work with you from over the years. Oh, it came up, yay! This is my first Zoom talk, so I'm very excited. Okay, artist as translator. So this is a piece that is inspired by William Stafford's poem, Walking the Borders. It reframes this narrative of separation to one of interconnectedness and love. Stafford was a pacifist during World War II, and in his poem, Walking the Borders, he references the Abrahamic traditions. Those fading languages of cursing and calling each other those names that destroyed millions by swinging a cross like an axe, or a crescent curved like a knife, or a star so red it burned its way over the ground. So I took this theme, and in the background of the painting, you can see in Hebrew, these are the 10 commandments. That for me is the fading language that has separated us from nature and has not ensured peace among nations. Here, the figure, this actually became somewhat of a self-portrait for me, because the figure here, you can see she's holding brushes in one hand and the skull in the other. And she is translating this narrative, this moral doctrine, into a new story of unity and oneness, as foretold in the prophecy of the eagle and the condor, shown flying wing to wing in the sky here. Above her head, you can see in Hebrew is ahave, which is love, radiating out in all directions. This is the All Nations Tree of Life. Our indigenous leaders are telling us that we are at a crossroads. They're warning us that we're at a crossroads. During the Parliament of the World's Religions in 2015, I saw Chief Arvel Looking Horse speak during the Indigenous plenary. He said, red, yellow, black, or white, we are one people. We must join together as a spiritual community in order to heal Mother Earth. The All Nations Tree of Life was inspired by this urgent message. Through a scientific lens, you can see the DNA weaving itself through the roots of the tree of life. It affirms this truth. He said, all nations, all faiths, one prayer. Our indigenous leaders, they have much to share with us, much wisdom, and we need to listen to them, and we are. But my belief is too, and this is what their message is also the same thing, is that we can rediscover our own ancestral roots by going back in our history, like goddess spirituality, our Celtic tradition, which is rich in rich landscape to explore the sacred relationship to the natural world. And so that was the vision behind this painting. The earth in the shape of an egg. It's our fragile earth, this paradigm that is cracking open. Transformation is assured, symbolized by the butterflies emerging. It's time to resurrect ancestral ways of knowing in order to ensure a livable, sustainable future for all beings. One need not deny faith in a God Allah, Yahweh, Krishna, or science. But my argument is, through my work and through my message, is that we need to reverence the earth with the same reverence and holiness. So what I ended up doing was starting to dig around in the Judeo-Christian tradition, which is the culture in which I was raised, though I no longer identify as a Christian. So the Lovers of Creation, the vision for this was to revision the Garden of Eden story through a shamanic lens. In Genesis 2:7, God formed man, which is Adam in Hebrew, from the dust of the red earth, Adama, and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. It doesn't get much more shamanic than that. So that was the vision for that piece, for this piece, and the overarching message being that we are, no matter what faith we choose or inherit, we are all born of the earth. And that is symbolized, it's hard to see probably at the size, but there's a little embryo in the tree of life, so that we are born of the earth, we are not fallen, we are not sinful. This is a piece that also shines a light on endangered species, the polar bear, spotted owl, tiger, and salmon. There's a honeybee, a Fender's blue butterfly. And over the years, I have raised money for the World Wildlife Fund and the National Resource Defense Council and other organizations working to protect our creatures through the sales of prints and posters and note cards and things like that. So this is a very large scale triptych. I'd hope to show it to you today, but it's almost 108 feet by 4 feet, so it's quite large. It also became there's a short documentary about 10 minutes called Journey into the Creation, which you can see at my website. It kind of goes into the details of the symbolism of Adam and Eve and all the different aspects of the painting. And it also became an installation that I'm going to show here shortly in a few minutes as well, called Return to the Garden. That was, I started this painting about 10 years ago, so this has been kind of an ongoing evolution with my work. The Wheel of the Four Winds. This was inspired by Rabbi Gershon Winkler's book, Magic of the Ordinary, Recovering the Shamanic in Judaism. And I just adored this reading, and I do a lot of research and reading of sacred texts, both old and contemporary, in my work to kind of peel out and reveal these earth honoring elements that have gotten lost over the millennia, with more attention on more of the transcendent God. So here, Gershon Winkler he's drawing from the mystical arm of Judaism, Kabbalah. You can see in the center of the medicine wheel there is the Tree of Life, or the 10 Sephirot there, and then the archangels around the outside. This piece became quite a large tarot card for me, because it's all about the evolution of consciousness and individuals and on our spiritual journey. So there's a lot of symbolism in my work. You can always go to my website, sacredartstudio.net, and go to my blog and put in the name of any painting and get more information that way too. So it turned out the year I was working on this, the horses were the animal for the Chinese New Year, and they're pulling the chariot, or Merkava as it's called. The Yggdrasil Tree of Life. This is a recent painting I just completed, but I have spent a lot of time reading about Norse mythology. It's inspired by my own Swedish ancestry, and I often think about my grandmother, whether she knew of this, the Vikings and all this fairy tales and giants that come along with this mythology. But I started out with the colors of the Swedish flag and on the edge, and so it's very complex, but the inside ring is from the Sami people, the colors of the flag there, and the Sami people are the indigenous people of Scandinavia. So here it's just, again, diving into my own roots to draw out the shamanic traditions that exist within my own culture, within my own ancestral lineage. And y'all can do that too. This piece, which is, I know this is one of Kim's favorites, it's a reciprocity mandala inspired by Braiding Sweetgrass. It's Robin Wall Kimmerer's sacred text that is now on the New York Times bestseller list. For me, it was the science that was the entry point into this conversation around this piece, because I find it was so inspiring to learn of the interconnectedness with all the different beings and the plants and how they work, and then weaving in her journey with earth-based wisdom. It's just an amazing text. If you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend it. So I love what she says. She says, knowing that you love the earth changes you. It activates you to defend and protect and celebrate. But when you feel the earth loves you in return, that feeling transforms the relationship from a one-way street into a sacred bond, the reciprocity. And this way of being is a profound homecoming that invites a deep gratitude and love for the earth. So I'm just reminded of reciprocity and what Emily and Shelby were talking about at the beginning about collaboration. It's that reciprocity that we're wanting and needing more of in our world with each other and with our planet. So I also do earth-based, ecologically inspired installations. So this quote from Thich Nhat Hanh, we must allow ourselves to hear the cries of the world. If we allow ourselves to hear, then we can also see what we can do. So it's about breaking open our hearts to the beauty of our world and then be inspired to take action. So the first installation that I did, it was at PCC Sylvania, Return to the Garden, which I mentioned earlier. You can see the Lovers of Creation here. It's an interactive art installation that remembers, mourns, and celebrates the garden that's right here, right now, not in a paradisal future. So this piece also includes, you can see the endangered species posters above. There's the video is being shown nearby. The mourning wall for honoring our grief and despair for all that we're losing in our world. And then there is you can see the participants working in the center there, excuse me, working on an interactive nature mandala that we co-create as an offering of healing and beauty for our world. The Memento Mori, Oceans in Crisis. This was inspired also during the Parliament of World Religions. I'd seen the documentary Racing Extinction. Another powerful documentary if you haven't had a chance to see this particular one. But it creates a space to make visible what's invisible, to question what are we willing to see and acknowledge, and do we veil ourselves to mask feelings of despair around the truth of a changing world? So much of what is now being threatened by the ecological crisis isn't visible to the human eye, such as plankton, microscopic organisms that float on the surface of our oceans. They're quite fascinating. You see a picture of one here in the corner. They're adorable and they're microscopic. I find it fascinating. So, and scientists believe that phytoplankton contributes 50 to 85% of the oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere. We breathe not only with trees, but we breathe with plankton. We are so interconnected with these creatures and we don't even see them. And scientists think we've lost 40%. With the exhibit, we're able to see that our very existence is linked to the health of the plankton and to our oceans, both of which are currently under stress. There's also another nature mandala ceremony that we co-create together as an offering of healing and beauty for our world. These paintings I just recently completed at the end of last year, and now with the pandemic, I haven't had an opportunity to show them yet, but the Where We Stand is Holy is a liturgy for the creation. It's a temple space for viewers to celebrate the holiness of the creation while honoring our grief for all that is dying or being threatened as a result of the escalating crisis. And Where We Stand is Holy comes from Exodus 3:5, when Yahweh says to Moses, "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." When we're standing on Mother Earth, on Mother Gaia, we are standing on holy ground. And how do we come home to this truth and begin to take the necessary actions to protect life on Earth? So the paintings are inspired by illuminated manuscripts, those beautiful manuscripts with all the decorative borders. And so each one is one's for the birds threatened by climate. The second one is prayer for the desert, prayer for the sacred waters, and then prayer for the Arctic. This is the last piece I have to share. It's called The Artist's Prayer. As we face these pandemics and the crisis of the climate, and I want to acknowledge the unfolding tragedy that's happening in Minneapolis right now and other reactions to the crisis there, for me, the role of the artist is to bear witness and to bring beauty and hope and joy and healing to our world. In closing, I'm going to close with the UN Environmental Sabbath Program. We have forgotten who we are. Now the forests are dying and the creatures are disappearing and the humans are despairing. We have forgotten who we are. We ask for forgiveness. We ask for the gift of remembering, and we ask for the strength to change. For love of the earth and all beings, may it be so. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, everyone who's here today.
Amy, you're always so beautiful, and how incredible that we got to have you be like this alumni for Earth Week and PCC exhibits, and I really am so grateful that you brought back several of those exhibits in the mandalas. You are a dear friend, and I do invite all of our participants to take a moment. Actually, here I'm going to share my screen and go back to our slide here. Just to do two deep breaths.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to carry, right? We're carrying a lot on this planet, and people who do this work care so deeply about sustainability, and it's hard sometimes to sustain ourselves. But in those 2 breaths, in your first breath, please thank plankton. 50% of our oxygen, and they do have cute faces when you get in really close. And the second, take another second deep breath, and the other half of our oxygen, thank plants and forests and all the good work that is happening above land and below our waters. And you are right. I love Braiding Sweetgrass. Everybody definitely needs to read this book. And I just had a realization, not only do I have lots of Amy's art in my home, including posters and some of your pieces you were showing, and you've even made into beautiful blankets, but I also have a beautiful braided sculpture from Shelby. And then I also have one of the baskets, which I gave to my partner, from Emily. So, and David, I've seen you perform. So anyway, everyone, you all should have these beautiful artists, some aspect of their spirit and their work in your homes. All righty, we need to get into our Q&A time. We're right on time. And hopefully you all can see this. I'll put it right into my view mode here, just again. Amy, Emily, Shelby, do you guys have a thought on like what is the role of art in our changing world? Or, you know, obviously you're all very committed to sustainability in lots of different pathways.
I can address that. I mean, I've spoken about that before, but for me, in so many ways, it's what actually we've been talking about here, is the power of art to break open our hearts, to, like David was saying, the emotional, to touch the emotional, and not just an intellectual exercise. I mean, there's certainly, artistically, there are those tracks out in the world, and that's part of the historical, you know, way things have been and whatnot. But today in our world, with so many critical things happening, so many crises, I think an artist who can break open their hearts to the beauty of our world and the beauty of others and inspire action, I think that's my hope anyway.
Beautiful.
Can I echo that too, that with Emily, that idea of the love, you know, it's like what you said, it's like you can't tell people to recycle, not get people to recycle because they're supposed to recycle, but how do you love the earth so much you don't want to do, you know, you don't want to do it harm. So it's out of that love that you're talking about. I love that, Emily, thank you.
I had a question on there about what's next. I wonder what's next for you guys. Everybody's going to get all of the websites and contact information. So if you have more questions for our artists, you'll be able to reach them. Amy, we'll wrap up with you.
Yeah, well, there's some pieces to the Where We Stand is Holy installation that I'm working on. There's going to accompany some video with that, and also potentially a book that I'm putting together that goes with it as well, talking about all the creatures. I mean, my real passion is for with Livingstone, my name, it's very shamanic itself, and I just have a very strong connection to the creatures. So wanting to kind of explore, bring more of the in a written way through language somehow with the work, with the visual. So it's that's what's up, and just holding space for what's going on right now. I do grief work, that's holding that space and that energy and holding out the love for all beings.
Amy, and you also have been interviewed on Erica's
All Things in the Name of Love.
All Things in the Name of Love podcast. Many more ways to learn about our artists. I have also benefited from Amy's teachings as a spiritual teacher, and I'm so grateful for the healing that you do for our work and our earth. So our final slides, we're going to wrap up here. We want to just thank you for everybody participating in the Q&As. We were able to read from the chat page. Again, if you have more questions, we will have this recorded. We will do a follow-up with all of our participants, and anyone who is registered will send you the resources list. There's more in the resources list than you have just here, but here are their emails and their websites. You can check out their art on all of those sites, actually, or support them. Of course, this is a time we want to be supporting our talented folks around the world.
This has been a pleasure. And I want to say, just like the Sustainable Development Goals, which is very interconnected, art is that thread that connects us all to identify a bigger space beyond ourselves, and also identify that bigger space within ourselves. So thank you all for joining, and thank you all artists for doing the work you do and going across borders, and really to tell us that there are no borders. Thank you very much.
Nirja. So thank you to our Executive Director of GPSEN, Nirja Havaligi. Thanks to everyone who's helped make our Sustainability Symposium series possible, including our Programs and Events Committee. If any of you feel called to support GPSEN's programs and events, again, the Greater Portland Sustainability Education Network, you can go to gypsen.org to help donate and support the work. So thank you for joining us. Please do check us out at gypsen.org. And remember that each and every person here who's on this call, every presenter, you're incredible educators. You've taught us how to empower ourselves and others, and some really fascinating ways to engage.